Welcome to today's webinar on speech analytics best practices and innovations, presented by VPI and Maintrax. My name is Katerina, and I will be your host today. After introductions, we will discuss top uses of speech analytics and best practices, followed by live demonstration. We have three presenters today. David Patchen from Maintrax. He is skilled in a variety of speech processing technologies, including both LVCSR and phonetic technology. Dave and his team at Maintrax do the heavy lifting. They listen to calls to capture true language, reverse engineering, and auditing results for accuracy and context. And they do this to optimize speech analytics deployments and increase their value and ROI performance. Then we have Greg Cummings. He's the Director of Solutions Consulting at VPI. Greg offers more than 15 years of professional experience in contact center management and consulting, operations, and learning and development. Greg has managed many high-profile engagements with clients like Walmart and Center Partners, Sony of Canada, and Hunter Douglas, to just name a few. These projects included the delivery of the fully optimized VPI Performance suite of products and services to drive improvement through outcomes-based performance optimization. And I'm Katerina Trovek, currently a workforce optimization solutions consultant for VPI. In this position, I'm leveraging 2 decades of management and technical expertise at VPI in the field of solutions for contact centers, and a decade of executive management of operations in the countries of European Union. So who is VPI? We offer the results of 20-year focus on the needs of contact center workforce optimization. Our technologies help more than 1,000 organizations worldwide improve the quality and value of their customer service and earn customer loyalty. All of our solution modules are integrated, and they include recording, quality assurance, speech and data analytics, workforce management, and business intelligence for the management of contact center performance. So why do we recommend speech analytics? So that we can catch problems and opportunities that we could not identify with any other types of contact center monitoring systems. Well, I would certainly want to know about it if my agents say things like these examples to our customers. That's just our policy. I know it's bad. Or, you don't need a landline with us. That's why we are so expensive. Believe it or not, these are quotes from an actual contact center conversation. Now let's talk about different types of analytics and how we can use them to find out what matters in calls. This looks just like my mailbox. It is always quite overstuffed, isn't it? Some of you might relate to this problem too. Most of what's in it waiting for me is junk mail, and I like to organize the rest of it by type and significance so that I can prioritize my attention to what matters and set aside what does not. And it works just the same way with recorded calls. These are my bins and buckets where I organize my mail. So it would certainly help if we didn't have to open every single envelope to see what's inside, and if it merits the investment of time. Having the summary of its contents written on the outside would help us process the mail much faster. Now, when it comes to recordings, we might have many more of them to sort through. And the more we know about them and about their content up front, the better we can organize them. And the smarter choices we can make about which ones to analyze further. And the more useful insights we can get from all those recordings, regardless of the volume. So on my envelope, these are the examples of call data that you most likely get with your recordings. And if you're lucky, You can also collect data on holds and transfers, and that's where it typically ends. But with desktop data capture, such as from your CRM system, you get much more factual insights into the purpose and content and context of the call, like which product they are calling about, or whether it's a billing inquiry or a complaint about a service. And speech analytics contributes further details about how the call went. So use your technologies wisely. Let's not jump straight to speech analytics to search for everything beyond your basic call data. Some contact centers have done just that without realizing that they would get a lot of timely and accurate insights simply by tagging CRM data to recorded calls. We would highly encourage you to increase the value of your call analytics by combining data-enriched recording with spoken phrases from speech analytics. This allows us to organize the calls much more precisely, and it leads you to much better insights and decisions. Let's see how CRM data collection contributes to analytics. If you were to stand behind your agent as he takes a call, with your ears plugged, could you tell what type of call they are handling just by looking at their screen? And would you be able to tell if you want to evaluate that call? Sure you could. Here we have a call about an online billing issue related to your new product A, made by a specific customer. And you can distinguish the customer by his ID. So what if all that data was automatically extracted and tagged to the call? Every call where this issue comes up. Well, that would certainly tell us if we have an isolated event or broader problem that needs to be addressed, wouldn't it? And we have not even touched any speech analytics yet. That's exactly what VPI Fact Finder does. It can recognize events and data related to specific fields and then tag this information to recorded calls so that you can run reports or get automated notifications of issues that need your attention. So now we can better appreciate various types of information that helps us categorize calls and how call data and screen data and events and spoken phrases contribute the pieces of the puzzle. Now we know what to do about calls, such as when the word ridiculous comes up. Based on KPMG insurance study, ridiculous is a very dangerous word. When it comes up in a conversation between your agents and your customers, it is a strong predictor of customer churn. You would certainly want to know, what about your service seems so ridiculous, so that you can eliminate the reason for these types of statements and the reason for your customers looking out to your competitors. Now here we have one example of using insights from analytics for quality assurance. Now that we know the content and outcome of each call, we can have business rules automatically choosing high-value calls that should be evaluated with your QA forms. These rules can link to selected calls and the most appropriate QA forms to your evaluator to-do list. And from there, the evaluation session is just a click away. And this means that not only your evaluators don't have to waste time by manual call searches, but the value of their work increases because it becomes very diagnostic and improvement-oriented. Now with speech analytics, we can do even better with quality evaluation and extend its reach to 100% of calls. We no longer have to play back calls to verify and rate things like proper greeting, or was there proper closing, or were all of the required items verified. All of this can be automatically monitored for conformance by speech analytics. And by offloading the evaluation of these types of questions from your normal QA process, you can shorten the number of questions in your go-to QA form by as much as 80% to allow QA analysts to focus on specific skills like accuracy and product knowledge and tone and active listening. Let's remember that no speech analytics is 100% accurate just because of the factors like accents or dialects or bad phone connection. But it doesn't really have to be. To provide a score of the approximate percentage of calls where the phrase was or was not said by the customer or the agent. For example, if a supervisor looks at the scorecard in our example here, they can see that there is a good probability that agent Stacy Adams is not properly saying the call recording disclaimer or verifying contract terms on a substantial portion of her calls. Your analytics-driven QA scorecard could look similar to this one, with speech analytics automatically scoring agent conformance in a top section, and your QA evaluators still manually reviewing a limited number of calls each month and scoring the skills that show up in the bottom section of the scorecard. In a conclusion of this introduction, we are sharing a quote from D&G Consulting. It confirms the fact that analytics-enabled QA offers a huge value to enterprises who want to meaningfully manage customer experience. At this point, I would like to hand over to Dave.
Thanks, Katerina. Before I jump in, I want to provide just a little bit more background about who we are, because it will give a little bit more frame of reference about the projects that we've been involved in. We're independent business analysts with an expertise in speech and text, have been in the industry for about 8 years, and have become very well versed in both LVCSR and phonetic technologies. In most cases, we start by helping clients define their business objectives, ideally a quick win so they can begin to get a faster return on their investment. And then we get deeply involved, from listening to calls to capture the true language that's used, to auditing the results for accuracy and context to make sure that it's delivering the intelligence our clients need. Most projects conclude with a best practices session so clients can become self-sufficient. For other clients who may not have the internal resources, we provide ongoing managed services. We've worked on more than 100 projects in the last year or so, and while no two are exactly the same, I'd say they generally fall into 3 main camps. Most involve improving agent performance, many involve getting a better understanding of the customer experience, and an increasing number of them are focused in on reducing operational costs. Regardless of whether they're using speech in real time or in post-call analysis, we highly recommend they choose an objective that's really actionable. Now, these are pretty broad categories, so I'm going to share some examples of each. Improving agent performance often starts with finding positive and negative examples that could be cited during target coaching and training. Most clients want to uncover skill gaps or a lack of knowledge, but they also may want to improve their agent's soft skills, the tone that they use, the emotional part of a conversation that impacts how customers think of them. 2 projects come to mind, one with a credit union and one with a utilities company. The credit union had a senior customer base, so it was important that agents were empathetic because there was a good chance that customers who were making changes to their account might be dealing with a death in the family. And the utilities company created rapport-building categories. Phrases that showed that the agents were drawing themselves closer to the customer were called magic phrases, and phrases that were showing that the agents were distancing themselves from the customers were called tragic phrases, like, "There's nothing I can do about that," or "That's our policy." Non-compliance. I'd say if you took a survey of upper management, I bet this is what keeps them up at night. We worked with an online university which wanted to make sure their agents weren't using false claims. They quickly discovered that some agents were telling their students that they were guaranteed to get financial aid. Those agents were taken off the floor the next day. And then there was a retailer of a wellness product who found out that their agents were claiming no side effects, when what they should have been saying was no known side effects. Analytics can have a huge benefit when it comes to augmenting the QA process. Without speech, clients may often just pick out 4 calls at random each month to evaluate. With speech, they have the opportunity to make sure that one of those 4 calls might pertain to a specific issue. For example, A cruise operator made it a point to include one call from a guest who was calling to cancel their arrangements to see how the agent was following the proper procedure. And a healthcare service to include a call dealing with a medical emergency to make sure that the agent was following the proper triage protocol. Those medical emergency calls were pretty rare, only about 5%, so speech analytics made it far more efficient to find them. Troubleshooting. A national jeweler wanted to see if their agents were redirecting the discussion if an item was no longer available. If the agent had to tell the customer, "I'm sorry, that product is no longer available," they were supposed to offer an alternative, such as, "I'm sorry, that line's been discontinued, but tell me, what was it that you liked about that ring? Maybe I could find something like it." A retailer of an animal wellness product did something similar. About 10% of their calls were from customers who were calling to cancel their monthly subscription because they already had too much product. With speech analytics, they could identify those calls much easier and see whether agents were using the right save techniques, such as, "Instead of canceling, ma'am, why don't we temporarily suspend your delivery? I could put your account on hold and then you can resume when you're ready." Monitoring for script conformance. This remains among the most common uses of speech analytics. In fact, we just started a project with a risk assessment firm who simply wants to make sure that their agents are telling customers that their call is being recorded. But like Katerina mentioned, we remind our clients that there's going to be a lot of noise in those results, so don't necessarily substitute it for hard data. Consider it more directional. Now, speech can also be used as a very effective way to create and maintain best practices. For a client in collections, they had no clear-cut method to determine the effectiveness of their process. We had to determine first how well their current process worked, then which skills were most important in generating results, who was using these skills and who wasn't, and whether the results began to improve after additional training. The key was having us reverse engineer hundreds of calls with known outcomes in order to determine which phrases led to those outcomes. Once the positive and negative phrases were identified and verified, all calls could then be measured exactly the same way, making it possible for supervisors to closely monitor agents and point out where they were falling short. We used the same approach with a client in home mortgages. The objective was to increase the number of loan packages sent because they knew that 60% of the time a package went out, it would eventually lead to a sale. After many iterations, some patterns began to emerge. We found that certain phrases led to positive outcomes, such as, "Pre-approval is a great start. We'll help you start to finish. How soon are you looking to purchase? No application fees," and "no obligations." Phrases that led to negative outcomes tended to be more passive in nature, such as, "Is now a good time?" or "There's no rush or hurry." They used these insights during role-playing and then later with real customer calls until the agents became more proficient. Similar to the other project, the reverse engineering necessary was pretty extensive, but the client said it would be well worth it, estimating that the targeted coaching would result in more than $2 million in additional income. Better understanding the customer experience. A lot of organizations use speech to learn the root cause of calls in order to train agents to become subject matter experts. One retail client took it a step further. He told us he was able to reduce the number of calls who had to speak to an operator by 5% by identifying why people were calling and then adding a new option to their auto attendant menu. Speech is a great way to gain some competitive intelligence too. A financial institution used it to identify which banks were coming up by name and which products and services they were offering. Many clients use speech to identify escalation requests to better understand what led up to that request. Was it something that the agent said or didn't say? This has been a very common objective for our clients in healthcare, retail, and insurance. And a lot of organizations have become interested in tracking trends in customer experience and customer journey. There's a lot of buzz in the industry, and I'll share an example of this in a minute. Many organizations use speech to reduce operational costs with general process improvements. And there's a good reason. It's been estimated that for every 1% improvement in first call resolution, a contact center reduces its operating costs by 1% and gains 1% in customer satisfaction. A moving equipment company we worked with discovered that many website visitors wound up calling because some key product measurements weren't listed on the company's website. An insurance provider was able to identify issues happening upstream with phrases like, "I never got anything in the mail." A current customer in finance wants to use their speech tool to identify unreturned calls. The client's going to use these results to augment their new open case initiative. And an insurance provider we're working with right now wants to separate calls that ended with a resolution from those that went unresolved. He plans on addressing the unresolved issues in order to reduce repeat calls. And for the calls that got resolved, he's going to present those results to Benchmark Portal, hoping to get industry certification. Now, some of these projects are more complex to implement than others. A lot depends on the business objective, the advanced functions of the speech tools, and the rule building necessary to capitalize on those functions. The rules may give consideration to the hierarchy of categories and phrases, whether they are repeat calls or first-time calls, and whether they are pertaining to issues about the product, the service, or the price. The number of times a phrase is said within a call, because at some point there are going to be some diminished returns in the value of that phrase. The proximity of phrases, that's the distance between two related phrases within the same call. Who the speaker was it the customer or was it the agent? The business value of a given phrase, and timestamp, where within the call that phrase was spotted. You can bet that a phrase like, "I'm going to take my business elsewhere," has a lot more value at the end of a call than at the beginning. I'm going to describe 3 business cases, one that was relatively simple, one that was a little bit more complex, and one that was yet more involved. A simple case of speech analytics is when you're using it primarily as a filter. VPI's Insight tool makes it very easy because categorization provides automated, consistent analysis of every call. A collections agency wanted to use the tool to spot any possible harassment by agents. Threatening phrases like, "We're going to garnish your wages," or you're giving us no choice but to pick up the vehicle," or "Where's the car right now?" Their chief compliance and privacy officer was pretty shocked when speech found these threatening comments and told me that the cost of an enforcement action could be in the $5 to $10 million range. The president of a different collections agency told me that they had reduced their legal fees by 15 to 20% with the use of speech analytics. A project of medium complexity would be one involving a combination of phrases. VPI calls this a pairing function. Greg will show you something more about that in a minute. We had a healthcare client who wanted to spot and fix issues that were happening upstream. They wanted to know more than just whether someone was saying that they had called previously. They wanted to know why. So we created multiple categories, including one titled Repeat Call for phrases like, "I called last week," and one titled Tech Issues for phrases like, "The website keeps crashing." We were later told that this client was able to quickly reduce their call volume by 2% by fixing the problem that had been exposed. This pairing function was also used by an insurance provider. Similar to the KPMG statistic that Katarina mentioned, we found that 38% of callers using a specific combination of shopping and miscommunication phrases churned within 4 months of their call. But be aware that projects like this do require extensive reverse engineering and testing to determine which combinations are the strongest predictor of customer behavior. And as an example of a more involved project, I wanted to describe the customer experience program we developed for a national cable company. Customer experience, or customer journey, has gotten a lot of attention these days. This particular project required the pairing function, the timestamp of a spotted phrase, the metadata of the call, who it was, the revenue represented by that customer, their tenure, where they lived, their demographics, and how often they called, and the metadata about the agent who handled the call, and their tenure and their work group. These are some of the categories that often get incorporated into journey mapping. Positive categories like agent empathy, agent professionalism, agent extra mile when the agent is going above and beyond. Let me check on that for you. Objection handling, account and technical resolution, transactions that might be occurring on a call that suggest that an upgrade might be taking place, and customer appreciation. Negative categories might be including price and product complaints, repeat calls, company miscommunication when customers are complaining that somebody told me different or that's not what the other agent said, confrontational phrases said by the agent, distancing phrases said by the agent, legal threats by the customer, escalation requests, competitor mentions, and issues that went unresolved. There are a lot of ways of using this intelligence. For this cable client, they took part of their insights to develop a new save strategy. They had loyalty specialists contact customers who were identified as being at risk within 48 hours of those customers' calls and determined that the customers that they had reached wound up churning at a rate 31% less than at-risk customers who were identified but not reached. I'm going to finish with what we see as the keys to success. First, consider what action you're going to take and have a strategy in place, and create a closed-loop feedback system to make sure that the intelligence that's being disseminated is providing the insight others can act on. Second, conduct a speech audit. A canned library is only going to take you so far. It's best to customize your phrase library based on what your customers are saying to your agents about your product and your service. Speech audits can also help you set important benchmarks that are going to come in great use when you need to compare results and track trends. VPI includes a speech audit with almost every project, and you'd be surprised how many times it exposes a new business objective that the customer hadn't considered. Third, commit to ongoing adjustments. Some phrases may be more difficult than others for a number of reasons to detect. And even if the detection accuracy is pretty close to the mark, you'll find that some phrases are often used out of context and may not actually provide the business intelligence you originally thought it might. And lastly, control expectations. Even though it's not a perfect science, it's a fantastic tool for revealing actionable business intelligence that otherwise would have gone undetected. It's far better to focus in on what is working about the tool instead of getting discouraged by what it's not. Ask yourself, will you be able to take action on high-value intelligence by eliminating 80% of the noise? If so, speech analytics will be a great solution for you. Now I'll turn it over to Greg Cummings for a demonstration.
Okay, and thank you so much, Kat and Dave. And thank you everyone for attending today. We definitely do appreciate your time. We know how valuable it is. And I just shared out my screen. I'm going to get into the live demonstration in just a second, everyone. But I want to just kind of touch on a couple of key points Dave wrapped up with and just re-emphasize that. And one of those main things is anyone looking to explore speech further, implement a speech solution to really drive some of these goals and objectives that Kat and Dave just talked about, it's really important that you have that speech audit done. And like Dave mentioned, we at VPI include a speech audit with each of our programs and processes that we put out for customers. And we utilize, obviously, the Maintrax team to do that. They're a great resource and have been, so beneficial to all of our customers utilizing our speech products. So highly recommend the speech audit, critical for success when deploying. Let the experts do their job and tell you really where you should be focusing. And then that commitment to adjusting and that controlling expectations is also key, right? Some of those just fine points for the keys to success to wrap up Dave's component there. Now, we digested a lot of information from both Katarina and Dave, and I know you guys are processing all that right now. And I want to take you through the product, and we're going to start in an area within the VPI suite, and that's what you guys are looking at right now. You're looking at the VPI dashboard, and this dashboard is kind of that jumping off point for all things VPI and data speech analytics related. And the reason I bring this here is because I want to point out a couple of key areas. As a user of a solution, you want to be able to digest and consume some information and then continue to do that analysis. The speech product, it's going to be doing the work, right? It's the back end, it's that engine that's taking all the calls and converting them to text, and then there's the magic that happens that takes that text and puts it into different categories, right, and allows you to kind of analyze the information. That's where you need to start. So when I look at this view, there's a couple things I want to talk to. The first one is something Katarina touched on in the beginning of her presentation, which is about kind of improving that quality management process through the use of data and speech analytics. And this is one of the areas I want to show. We'll take everyone's eyes to kind of the upper right-hand portion of the screen here that I'm circling with my mouse. This is an evaluation task list that's built inside the VPI Empower suite, right, utilizing data and speech analytics, where with the presence of the speech data and knowing how those calls are categorized for either a repeat contact, a billing issue, customer service, right, we can actually take a percentage of those calls and automatically assign them to your quality analyst team to review. So anyone out there on the phone right with us right now and kind of watching this webinar, if you got a quality focus or quality centric area in your organization, right, ears perk up. That's really where we want to take you guys, is utilizing technology to help improve your efficiencies and help give you further insight into that precision-based quality monitoring. And you can automatically have those keyed up, and I can immediately start a quality review because I know that that call that Kurt took, right, as the agent was with a customer, and that customer expressed dissatisfaction with the product. And I identified that through speech analytics. That's going to take you a long way to utilizing that data in a meaningful fashion. Now, additionally on my dashboard, I've got a lot of different metric elements built on the latest technology, HTML5, and what I can start to see here on this dashboard is how many calls have been categorized by my speech engine, right, over a certain defined range, right? But I can also start to see, right, from this perspective, how are my calls are being categorized, and I can easily start to understand, right, how many customers expressed maybe confusion in the last 30 days, or maybe today, or the last month or year. So being able to consume the information from a single unified dashboard, being able to drill into this is also critical. You need to have that at your fingertips where you can select these data points and drill down into the data, because that's really where speech starts to become powerful, is the ability to analyze, understand, and then start to inject process improvement and drive all that change that we were talking about, right, with Katarina and Dave. So now I'm going to take us to the next evolution. Let's really dive into speech. So follow me here, everyone. Take your eyes to the upper left. I'm going to go into our Insight module, right, in the upper header, and we're going to first start at that data analysis view, right, through our category instant analyzer. Remember, we're categorizing calls based on, right, the outcome of that call, that interaction with your agent. And this is where we really want to start to dig through the data. So you'll see the view that we first land on. And again, this is another business intelligence dashboard, all related to speech analytics. What we're looking at here is a range of data for this year, because I like to look at data for speech in long-term, right, kind of cycles, where I want to look at it for this year or the last 6 months or 3 months. That's going to give me a good insight into the health of my organization and where I might need to focus my attention. So let's look at some of these views. The first two up here I really, really like. It's what are the most used categories for the range that I've selected. I can see I've got customer service, empathy, right, which are one of those positive signs that Dave talked about. Pleasant customer experience, delighted customers. Then I can kind of see, right, my center's probably doing pretty good. A lot of good positive signs there from a speech analytics, right, analysis view. But then I can kind of come down a little bit and say, wow, I've had 4,000 repeat contacts so far this year, or for the period that I've defined. That might be a little bit concerning. Or, right, 2,800 customers expressed dissatisfaction. These are metrics that I might want to drill down a little bit further on, and that's what I want to be able to do. I don't want to just analyze data, and we're going to go through some more of these charts and talk to them, but I actually need to be able to step down further and say, let's go look at those calls. Why are these calls, right, categorized as customer dissatisfaction? That's actually going to take me right down to the individual interaction level, and I could play this call from here. I could read this transcript. I can see how it was categorized, when it took place. And if I wanted to just look at this transcript, I'm going to show you a couple of really cool things right now. It's going to load that transcript up for me. And here it is. I can read the transcript, but this is a pretty long call, so I don't necessarily need to go through all this. Take your eyes to the top of that view bar in the blue here. You'll notice there's the green. What if I just click on that? Watch this. Takes me right to the phrase or term that helped to categorize this call as a customer dissatisfaction. Now that is using technology at its best, right? Being able to take you to the area that you need to focus on. You don't need to necessarily look at the noise, right, of the rest of the interaction. You want to understand why that customer was categorized as a dissatisfied customer. We're going to get you there. Simply click on it, take you right down. Easy, simple to use interface. Now I return to my Instant Analyzer view. I can, again, play the call if I wanted to, or I'm going to jump back up to my data analysis view. We can look at things like our least used categories. Those are good, right? And one view that I really want to focus on here for a second is the largest increase in use in the previous period and the largest decrease, because again, these are really important to me. Look at the far left chart. Why do I have so many customers calling in to make a final payment? Why? In the last 30 days, that's my previously defined period, we've had a lot of customers calling in to churn out, right, or make their final payment. That's a concern. I want to focus on it. Largest decrease. Oh, system down. That's good. Means I've obviously fixed some kind of an issue that we've had, and I don't have as many customers calling in and reporting their systems are down. Most found at the beginning of the call, right? How are those calls starting out from a categorization perspective? They're pleasant, we've expressed an empathy, good customer service, delighted customers, all positive metrics, right? Most found at the end, again, customer service, pleasant, empathy, delighted. Hey, that's good. I want my calls to start that way and end that way, so that's really important. Again, you can see the insight that we're being able to derive from this data, and I'm going to get down to the bottom one because this is something that Dave really touched on. Obviously, it takes a bit of reverse engineering and really kind of understanding the landscape of the organization and the types of calls that are being processed in your interactions with your customers. But when you start to be able to look at your top paired categories, again, it's really a key driver for understanding what that customer experience is. We know that in today's contact center world, the customer experience is critical, and that's really where the focus is. It's about the end-to-end life cycle of a customer, their entire experience, and being able to use this data to help support that is one of those core drivers. I'm going to take us back up, and we're going to step through a few more of these data analytic views because this is really where it all starts. I want you guys to be digesting this, right? A lot of great information has been shared. We're also going to send you a copy of this video. You're going to get the materials that we presented with, and we're going to be available for any questions you might have after this to really help you further understand how speech can be a benefit in your organization. When we look at things like by objective, again, this is key. You want to be able to set objectives up front, and that's one of those critical components when you start to sit down and do your planning as an organization, because speech does require that forethought that says, how are we going to use this to effectively change, and what's that ROI case that we're going to build, how are we going to improve, right, and meet our objectives. You want to set those outcomes. And now we can see, right, billing issues, call tenor, right, greeting, other issues. If I was to select on one of these, it's going to expand, and I can just highlight the ability to drill down in multiple views, right, and continue to analyze the data. One of my favorite views I want to take you to is the trend view. I really like this chart because it does tell me a compelling story. I can actually select two different categories. Take your eyes to the left-hand side of the screen. I can select billing inquiries and see how that correlates to customer dissatisfaction. Now I'm going to change my view and look at it by month because, again, I'm running a large time period. Now this tells me there's a direct correlation with peaks and valleys with customer dissatisfaction and billing inquiries. Now that might be common sense for some, but apply that same logic to any of the categories that you have created or we create out of the box, and now you can start to understand and bring those two together and compare them. This is the type of data analysis that you're really not going to find with other solutions, and really where we put our focus and emphasis. The engine is the engine. It's going to do its work. It's going to process those calls, and it's going to put them in the categories, and Maintrax is going to help you define what you should be focusing on, and right, VPI is going to give you the great product, but at the end of the day, you need to have the resources and the wherewithal to actually consume the data and then drive that internal process change, and that's what you're going to get with our product. So being able to look at the data, and then one more view that I really like is looking at the group view, because I can look at all of my groups that are within the organization. I might have customer service, technical support, billing, right? I might have a number of different groups that are handling these calls and all being processed, and I want to be able to look at the different groups and see how they stack up with relation to each of the categories that have been defined. The wealth of information you're going to be able to consume through the product is going to be, you know, I think more than you're going to want, but you're going to love it, right? Data is king. Data is the new oil in so many cases. So we want to give you access to that oil and let you have it and have all of it. So let's move on. I want to touch now on some of the more functional things that users will continue to do with the speech product once it's been deployed. I'm going to go in here into my Insight search view, and I'm going to show you how to do some keyword spotting, because this is also another key component. When I open up my keyword search view, the first thing I'm going to expose to you is how we can use a set of saved searches that you as a user can create. How cool is that? I want to go in on a daily basis, because I'm the director of the contact center, and look at all my calls that resulted in repeat contacts. Okay, all I have to do is run that, and it's going to return my results. And look on the left-hand side, everyone. Take your view. You can see how I was able to construct this search by building with keywords and phrases using the proper operators, right, that allow me to return the results I'm looking for. Now, this, again, is something you're going to learn in training, but it's very simple. This is not a tough process. Let me show you actually how that's done. I'm going to take myself back to the beginning of the month of October, and I'm going to just search for something like website. And now I returned 79 calls so far this month where the word website was mentioned. Oh, what if I added another filter? And how about the word down? Because this might be critical information for my marketing team to know, because it drove in calls to the call center instead of driving self-service. I can quickly do those searches. I can get that information off to other users. And if I was to select one of these, I want to show you a couple other neat things. When I load it up in my media player down below, I'm going to expose to you what that media player looks like. Now what you'll notice is you see the little magnifying glasses. That's actually going to tell me where the words were said, and I can actually quickly jump to that point and play it from here. Right? We want to get you to the good stuff fast, and that's what's really critical. So being able to see that in your media player, being able to utilize and review the text, right, of this entire interaction, again with my green highlights, jumping through the view. KISS, that's how we build Keep It Simple Stanley. We want to make it easy for you to consume the right information at the right time and get to that actionable data. Keyword content phrase searching, data analytics through our category instant analyzer, which I'm going to jump back to right now for you. Again, being able to maintain and consume this data, and it all really ties back to where I'm going to finish off, and we'll open it up for questions here in just a second, your business intelligence dashboards, right? The product offered by VPI, best in breed, speech analytics to help you drive organizational change and improve the way you do business. Partnered with, right, the consulting firm Maintrax, who are the best in the industry. These guys are experts, and they're going to be able to give you the service that you need to be successful in any endeavor. So we welcome you to reach out to us further with additional contacts and any questions you might have. And we're very excited that you're able to attend the webinar with us today. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Katerina and Dave, and collectively as a group, we'll answer any questions you might have. And if we don't have enough time for all the questions, we'll be getting those to you after the webinar. So thank you so much, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon.